Welcome to YouTube's daily session. Today we will discuss the topic that is giving decarbonization a much needed priority. The article appeared in Hindu Business Line. It is important in the context of India's decarbonization targets, specifically our net zero emissions. Okay, and in this context, our commitments with respect to Paris Climate Agreement and the commitments made by India at Glasgow Summit. Okay, so in this context, we need to see first of all what is decarbonization, how that process of decarbonization occurs, what can the government do to improve the process, what the government has already done, and what can be the way forward. So starting with first of all, we will discuss what is decarbonization. So decarbonization, it refers to the process. This is a definition that you can also use within your mains examination also, very simplistic definition. It is a process of reducing carbon intensity by lowering the amount of greenhouse gas emissions produced by the burning of fossil fuels. So very in simplistic term, if we define it, it is just the reduction of GHG emissions, okay, or reducing the carbon dioxide immensity, which happens majorly due to the burning of the fossil fuels. So this is the process of what is known as decarbonization. In next line also if we see it, it's stated there that it involves decreasing CO2 output per unit of electricity that is generated. So what is our main motive here is, main motive is to reduce the output, that is CO2 that is generated. So reducing the amount of carbon dioxide occurring as a result of transport and power generation. Majorly there are many ways basically through which carbon dioxide is added into the atmosphere, but the two most prominent areas, one is power and other is considered as transportation. And if you will observe, you will come to notice that these are the major two areas where the government has initiated majority of the schemes with respect to reducing the carbon dioxide emissions. For example, if we talk about transportation, then the government is taking initiatives to promote the electric vehicles. Okay, then it involves how the process of decarbonization can be done. It involves the use of renewable energy resources like wind power, solar power, biomass is there. Then the use of carbon power can also be reduced through the large scale use of electric vehicles alongside the cleaner technologies. So in nutshell, what we have discussed here is in the process of decarbonization. In very simplistic terms, it is just reducing the intensity of the carbon dioxide that is added into the atmosphere, majority through the basically generation of the burning of the fossil fuels, okay, and it can be decreased through the use of renewable energy sources and by adopting the cleaner technologies or by adopting the use of electric vehicles. Moving forward, so if we consider the context of India, we already know that India is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gas basically after after China and US. This is also particularly important with respect to your prelims examination. This thing can be asked, some type of data, some type of facts are always asked in the UPSC examinations. So you need to know that India is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases after China and US. So as our GDP, our economy will grow, it is stated that our emissions will also spike. Why the emissions will spike? Because our energy demand will increase in the context of industrialization. Okay, as industrialization will lead to more burning of fossil fuels, that will increase the greenhouse gas emissions. So energy demand is projected to go up by 6 times by 2070. So India is already at a basically very top position in the context of GHG emissions, but as our country will grow, as our GDP will grow, as the process of industrialization will increase, the industrialization will also take at an advanced pace, which will lead to more generation burning of the fossil fuels, which will lead to further energy demands in the country, and the data states that it is expected to go up at least by 6 times by 2070. So further, how this process will energy demand will increase? Obviously, as the demand for air conditioning and appliances are there in buildings and houses, then the advent of electric vehicles, you also need energy generation for that. Then enhanced manufacturing, it will increase electricity consumption, so that electricity consumption will increase the what we say energy demand. Further, to tackle this kind of energy demand, the generation of the burning of the fossil fuels and the kind of GHG emissions that it will produce, various type of global summits have been already held with respect to this, which talks about commitments from all the nations on the net zero emissions and carbon neutrality. Two major terms. This is your home task also. You need to go and at least prepared 100 or 150 notes on both the technical terms that are or keywords that are mentioned here: net zero emissions and carbon neutrality. And yet fossil fuels like coal, oil and natural gas, they supply 80% of the world's energy basically use. So in this context, when our world is dependent upon the fossil fuels, and that too contains 80% of the energy mix, obviously it is a basically very worrisome situation. So that is why large parts of the developing countries rely on that. That is why energy debates have been started, whether we should achieve the net zero emissions or how to achieve the basically phenomena of carbon neutrality. At Paris summit on climate change in 2015, world leaders agreed to a basically target that our global warming levels will be below 2 degrees Celsius, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial levels, that we will basically strive for 2, but if we can do, we can also basically go for 1.5 degrees Celsius targets to the pre-industrial levels, that we will try to limit the global temperatures to this level. So in this context, when various commitments have been made on the Paris summit is there, similarly like recently happened Glasgow summit is there, India has also taken various measures and adopted strategies to decarbonize the economy, basically to achieve the process of carbon neutrality or to achieve net zero emissions. In this context, we all need to basically debate the Panchamel strategy. So what is Panchamel strategy? Announced recently. So what does it talk about? It basically, from here, from Panch, we can obviously derive that it talks about 5 targets that are set by India. Okay, obviously they are non-binding in nature, okay, that India aims to achieve in the context of basically environment preservation and conservation. So first of all is that India will get its non-fossil energy capacity increased to basically 500 gigawatts by 2030. So first target that India set is, it aims to enhance its non-fossil fuel energy capacity by 2030 to a particular level, that is 500 gigawatts. So in this context, we have already discussed that fossil fuels, they contain 80% of the energy mix. So this, what does this first target signify? This target signifies that India aims to basically reduce the dependence upon the fossil fuels and basically aims to shift towards the renewable energy. Second thing is, India will meet 50% of its energy requirements till 2030 with renewable energy. Again, if you will see that second target, again it is a shift towards from the fossil fuels to the non-fossil fuels and specifically to the renewable energy, and the target is specifically stated that it will be 50% that will be coming from the renewable energy. Okay, third one is India will reduce its projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons by 2030. So in this context, obviously we are discussing decarbonization. Okay, so India aims to basically reduce the carbon emissions that are being added to the atmosphere by 1 billion tons by 2030. Then India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by 45% by 2030. Again, a very significant target in the context of decarbonization, and the most important one, that India will achieve net zero emission target by 2070. So all these basically 5 targets are essential for your prelims examination, because anything can be asked in a type of statement in your in a examination, that under a Panchamel strategy that India aims to achieve net zero, for example, by 2090, or what is a basically how much carbon intensity the government wants to reduce, whether it is 50%, whether it is 60%, or whether it is 45%. So you need to basically remember all the targets as well as all the years that are associated with these targets. And secondly, you also need to remember this Panchamel strategy for your mains examination. This can be directly asked. Okay. Further, along with this, there are basically some other initiatives also that were launched by the government in this context. First of all was the setting up of International Solar Alliance in 2015 to promote solar energy in 121 tropical countries. So this was basically established by government. Then second one was obviously to add here, India's solar energy basically alliance is also important because it is a renewable energy source, and our government has already stated that 50% will be coming from renewable energy. So it is important in that context. Then additionally, waste to energy projects offer twin benefits of making India clean and green. Specifically, basically policy have been also introduced, many projects have also been introduced, okay, again to move towards what is called as clean energy. Then India has also set an ambitious target of achieving 450 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030. Okay, that is also a significant target that has been established, and it is important in the context of Panchamel strategy. So in this slide, what we have discussed is, we have discussed first of all a very important step that has been taken by India, or very important initiative that has been taken by India to decarbonize the economy, to basically go for environmental preservation and conservation, and that is basically Panchamel strategy. 5 targets have been listed here. The specific targets and the years you will have to remember for your prelims examination, and it is necessary for your mains examination also. Okay, and there are some other initiatives also that were earlier launched by the government to reduce the carbon emissions, so you also need to know about them. Moving forward, what else basically we can do to decarbonize? For example, if the government wants to decarbonize, we have already discussed that carbonization, basically what are the areas from where significant carbon emissions are happening. One is the transport sector, okay. Second one we have called out, that is the power sector. Then third one can be the industry. 3 major components, and something needs to be done in this context if we want to reduce the carbon emissions. So first of all is the transport sector. What we can do, we can incentivize the carbon vehicle charging infrastructure, along with side implementing electric vehicle sales mandates. Many government schemes have been launched in this context. Basically your target is, home task is to basically know about what are the specific schemes that have been launched to promote the electric vehicles charging infrastructure. Then second one is to decarbonize the industry sector. Here we have basically already a scheme that is going on, that is perform, achieve and target scheme. It is also a part of some mission that has been launched by government. Again, your home task is to basically identify what is the mission under which this scheme operates, PAT scheme, perform, achieve and trade schemes, from a pilot program, and reduce the energy use across cement, iron and steel and chemical industries by 25%. Another thing that we can do is we can introduce a progressive carbon tax that incentivizes industries to further reduce their dependence on fossil fuels. Obviously, the industries which are heavily dependent upon the usage of fossil fuels, they will be levied a carbon tax so that some sort of disincentivization can be done, and the companies basically move towards the cleaner energy sources. So that is there. And last one here is the to basically electric sector to implement what we can do is carbon free electricity standards to achieve 90% of electricity from non-fossil fuels by mid-century. So obviously in power sector or electric sector also we need to adopt some standards that are basically in sync with our decarbonization strategy, so that the electric sector basically produces less carbon emissions from what it is doing now. So these three areas basically we have discussed. First of all is the transportation sector. Transportation sector government can promote the EV sale. In industry sector basically government can do some sort of basically progressive carbon tax. Then perform achieve trade scheme is there basically that reduces the usage of fossil fuels. Okay, and third one is the basically electricity standard electricity sector where carbon standards can be implemented to reduce the carbon emissions. Next one basically if we move further, what can be the way forward if the question comes to in your examination that what discuss the government strategies that have been launched in this context and what more can be done. Okay, first of all, three additional policy steps that are there that you can introduce. First of all, we need to bring out a policy that sets clear signals to phase out polluting and inefficient technologies. A policy should be launched with some specific, like we have Panchamel Strategy, with some specific targets, timeline, okay, and a clean and clear strategy as to how we will be phasing out the polluting and inefficient technologies from our country. First is that one. Second is to basically what can be done is to bring out policies that basically incentivize and promote low carbon, specifically low carbon technologies. Okay, and further we also need to adopt a strategy that if we are adopting low carbon technologies, the government revenue should not basically go down, it should be in some sort of way compensated for the reduction in carbon intensive revenue, okay, by 2015, and so that we can sustain a ambitious development and social investment program. What it is stating that the industries that are contributing well to our economy, that are basically dependent upon fossil fuels, if we will be shifting to renewable sources, the new technologies may not be that efficient in the short run. Okay, they may take time to basically to be fully implemented, to be fully efficient. In that time basically the government revenue may go down, so that revenue needs to be compensated. There needs to be a strategy for that also, so that the government does not basically push its hand that we do not want to incentivize the low carbon technology, so that we have a fear that we will be losing the revenue. And finally we need to bring out the policies that crowd investments over the next decade into the low carbon technologies. We need investments basically which promote low carbon technologies, so that some sort of R&D can happen. Their loopholes, their hindrances, their inefficiencies can be weeded out, and so that we can enable the transition into a prosperous and innovation economy. This shifts in focus which builds India's already existing ambitious climate goals and India's economic policies as well. So in this page we have what we have discussed. We discussed what more can be done. So we have a three-hand policy mechanism for that. First of all, we need to basically set up policy with clear timeline, with clear targets, with clear strategy to phase out polluting and inefficient technologies, first of all. Second one is basically we need the government to be compensated, so that basically government's revenue does not go down if we are shifting our basically dependence from fossil fuel to another technologies. And third one is basically we need investments into the low carbon technologies, so that it can be made more efficient, it can be implemented well. So this was all that was there with respect to the decarbonization. We discussed what is decarbonization, how it can be, how it is done, what are the government initiatives, or what is a major government initiative, that is Panchamel Strategy, how decarbonization can be done in the major sectors which contribute to the environment, and then what more can be done. And in this context we will also be doing one prelims question. The first, see what is the question here. First, the line what it states is India aims to achieve the target of net zero emissions by 2050. Second question is the second line is India has committed to achieve 40% of its installed electric capacity from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030 in Glasgow summits, and we have to choose the correct number from the following ones. First of all, if we have already seen in the Panchamel Strategy that India aims to achieve the target of net zero emissions by not by 2050 but by 2070. So this statement is wrong. Second one is, again, it is a very technical statement. Three things that need to be seen here. First of all, whether this target is correct, whether this timeline is correct, second thing, and third one, whether it was committed in this summit. So if you have read it properly, basically in the newspapers, you will see that India has definitely committed to achieve 40% of its installed electricity from non-fossil fuel energy sources. By which year? By 2030. That is also correct, but not in Glasgow summit. This was committed in Paris Climate Agreement. Okay, Paris Climate Agreement. In Glasgow summit, basically India introduced Panchamel Strategy. Okay, so both the statements are wrong. So answer is neither 1 and 2. So this was basically the prelims question that was associated with the decarbonization strategy. So this will be all from my side. Thank you very much.